Hello and welcome to Girl Talk. This is Rini Das. I'm the CEO of PAKRA Games. We produce serious games and we launch it on our proprietary human capital management system. I have a distinct pleasure today to have Phaedra Boinodiris with, did I say it right, your last name?
You said it perfectly, perfectly.
Thank you, thank you. Phaedra was the CEO of WomenGamers.com, and she currently is the global program manager for serious games and gamification at IBM. And she has also written a book, and that's what we are going to talk about. It's called Serious Games for Business. Welcome, Phaedra.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
Well, Phaedra, you know, I read your book a couple of weeks ago, and what was very interesting, by the way, I have followed your career since we started PAKRA Games, and we used to be, and still, I think most of our business, not most of our business, but 40% of our business still comes from management consulting. And we used to be in the operational excellence and the business process world, you know, Lean, Six Sigma. And we looked at the possibility of how do we increase user adoption, learning adoption, and these types of questions, and came across serious games around 2007, 2008, and we kind of gravitated, you know, which is 60% of our business, which is our, you know, games and the technology platform from there. And you have come from sort of the gaming world and gravitated to the business process area. So if you can tell our audience as how this journey happened, because we are in the same place, it seems, at the same time.
It was definitely a circuitous and unplanned route, as some of the
Awesome.
best journeys are. I've been at IBM now for about 7 years. And prior to that, I had been an entrepreneur for 14 years. And you had mentioned
Awesome.
Women Gamers. That was one of my companies. So with Women Gamers, we were focused on women who play computer and console games. Now, mind you, this was before Nintendo came out with the Wii, before there was a lot of focus on casual gamers or the mobile games market or anything like that. And the reason why we initially started it was because I played, my friends played, my sister played, my cousins played, but we'd open up most gaming magazines and look at most gaming websites, and they were targeting young men, so we knew there was a tapped market. So we started this company, and we started reviewing games out on the market, and we wrote a lot of articles. Now, this was during the big .com boom.
Absolutely. Yep.
And we got a lot of emails, from people saying, well, if you don't like the way that women are depicted in games, why aren't more women designing them and developing them, which is a good point.
Right.
So we started a scholarship program for women to pursue degrees in game design and development. We started the first one in the U.S.
Wow.
And then there started to be this big shift in the market. And you can always tell whether a shift in the market is happening, especially with regards to women in a particular industry, by seeing how long the line is for the women's restroom at their big conference. So we went to both the Game Developers Conference as well as the Electronic Entertainment Expo, E3. Right. And we just saw this tremendous shift. I remember it was the year that Nintendo came out with the Wii. And suddenly the marketing, the number of women represented there who were not booth babes,
right.
Just there was this market shift. And so I figured, I need to learn more about pursuing venture capital so I could start a studio to create indie titles and go after casual games. So at this point, I decided to go back and get my MBA. After 14 years of being an entrepreneur, I figured, I better learn something more about accounting and finance and writing business plans. So I went and to UNC, where I had done my undergrad, and I did a bunch of case competitions. These are when a business will go to a business school with a real-life challenge, and the students have overnight to form teams and pitch solutions the next day.
Absolutely.
So I just ate these up. These were so much fun. I really enjoyed them. And at about the sixth one, IBM came to the school, and there was a competition between UNC and Duke. The big
awesome.
basketball rivals. So, representing UNC, so I pulled together a team. The challenge was that IBM had business process management software, and they were looking for innovative ways of explaining it to non-tech. I had no clue. I had no clue what business process management was. They just handed us a stack of papers about this thick and said, read it. I'm sort of reading this, going through, flipping the pages, and I'm realizing, okay, tweaking different business rules, seeing how it affects a broader environment. This could be a strategy game.
Absolutely.
Right? Competing models, you could collaborate around a model, it could be highly visual, you're trying to hit key goals. And so I tell my team, I'm like, hey, how about a strategy game? Here's what I think this could look like. And I ended up arguing with this one student on my team until 2 in the morning. Because he said,
well, dissension always, an argument always gets you the best results. Right?
Either that or hives. I don't know. We argue. He says games are for kids. IBM is way too conservative. They're never going to buy this idea. And I said, no, the average age of the gamer is 34 years old. It is not, the 7-year-old playing as the average gamer. And so finally he picks up the stuff and he leaves the room. And then the rest of the team and I end up presenting the idea bright and early the next morning. And unbeknownst to me, the vice president for strategy was one of the judges.
Oh, wow.
And she pulls me aside and says, I want to greenlight this idea right now. Can you make this for me in 3 months? And I said, it takes years to make a really good video game. And she says, well, I'm just looking for a proof of concept to see if you can even use games to help explain process improvement, right? Just as a case study. Mm-hmm. I said, okay. So I started interning at IBM while I was getting my MBA full-time, working with a local IBM team and a studio to start designing and developing this game. I had just a tremendous amount of support from IBM, and we had the subject matter expertise, and the studio was wonderful, and we ended up creating this prototype that we then rolled out through IBM's academic initiative.
Cool.
This is a free program where schools worldwide use applications from IBM. And we had, within the space of 6 months, over 1,000 schools downloading and using that game. And we got all these testimonials from professors who started to tell us, I'm using this as part of my core curriculum now to teach process improvement to kids.
What was the game called?
It was called Innovate with the number 8.
So was this on Second Life initially?
No, it was never on Second Life. No.
Okay.
It was its own gaming engine. We actually initially used a first-person shooter gaming engine. In hindsight, I wish we hadn't. I'll tell you why in a few minutes.
Okay.
At the time, it was cheap and it was easy, and we wanted to get it launched quickly as a prototype.
Right.
But it was just tremendous, and what really hit home for me, besides the professor testimonials, was when we actually showed it at IBM's big business conference called Impact.
Right.
And there were all these customers of IBM saying, wow, I'd love a game like this with our own process models in here so that I can teach our own people not only process improvement, but how is it that this could be optimized for our group. And it just hit me that this isn't going away.
I know.
This isn't going away, and that this is only going to get stronger. So I was asked to incubate serious games for IBM within their software group, focusing on creating games that helped explain complex systems that we sell. And then since then, and this was about 5 years ago, all of these efforts that we had done with process improvement games and just explaining things like smarter cities using games started to get the attention of the Department of Defense.
Right.
And they asked me to come and present on, what's the evolution of serious games and advanced simulations. And what I said to them was, we're at this really unique confluence of technology, this really unique point in time where we can integrate real data and real processes within sophisticated gaming engines. And the upshot for this is that as a byproduct of your gameplay, you're not just teaching somebody something, not just teaching a particular skill, but the byproduct of your gameplay is that you're actually optimizing processes. And so long story short, that got a lot of attention, and I was asked to incubate a new practice within our consulting division, focusing primarily on that, so using games to help solve problems.
Awesome. You probably have no idea about this, but I'm guessing that this happened in 2007, 2008, around that time?
Which part?
The part about your MBA and launching the initial...
That happened in 2007. Right.
So when we were starting, in 2007, we had brought, several people. That's how the name of PAKRA came about. It was Pam, Ann Claire, Ken, Rini, and Andy, and there was another guy called Chris Kesey, and we brought them in the same room, and I pitched this idea about how we can use games to talk about business processes, and we used your example.
No. Get out.
It was on our business plan, it's on our operating agreement and everything. It was called Innovate. And I said, IBM is going in this direction, and I don't think I'm crazy, for us to consider.
You're not crazy. You're not crazy.
So it was kind of, mea culpa that after, this many years, our worlds kind of converge.
Oh, I'm thrilled. That makes me happy. It's actually in your business plan. That's really cool.
And what was it has stayed on our business plan, all the way through. And what was also interesting, you mentioned about Department of Defense. The idea of using games for processes. Actually, we created a multiplayer classroom game for Northrop Grumman. Which was one of our clients, and it was called Where's My Space? It's a 3-day event, Is it an
alternate reality game, ARG?
No, it wasn't it was paper and pencil. But it was a completely role-playing, and the only things that there's some computer in the sense of all the assets, did come from we used the computer for it. And it was completely designed for process innovation. And we have subsequently, that's one of our best-selling simulation game that we have used you mentioned business school. We have used it, at Notre Dame's business school and at Fisher extensively over the years to teach MBAs. So it's all, your story is so much in tandem to our story. It's just, to me, it's just like, this is fascinating.
I had no idea. That's really awesome. That makes me feel good.
Absolutely. Kind of taking on the point about helping people solve problems and change behaviors. As you know, employee engagement has become the biggest buzzword. And I shouldn't, demean it by saying it's buzzword. It's a very important, crucial element with all the technology changes and system changes and process changes that we make employees go through. One of the things that you do talk about, and it's very dear to our heart too, is how games can, can span the entire life cycle of an employee. From recruit, assess, onboard, learn, perform, and compensate is the life cycle that you talk about. We actually, do exactly in that life cycle, and we built, sort of a human capital management system there, and we've got some really cool results from our clients who have used it. You have done it too, I'm sure, at IBM. Can you tell our audience why it works? why serious games works in this life cycle.
Well, I wouldn't want to say it's just serious games. I'd also encompass gamification in general.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
the reason why is because gamification is in its essence motivational design.
Correct.
And the big pain point right now with regards to human resources and human capital is that 70% of employees have completely checked out. They're completely disengaged, which has led to just some tremendous statistics with regards to lack of productivity and the cost of this disengagement. So really, in its essence, if you can hit upon what is it that motivates people, what is it that motivates the knowledge worker of today, you can start thinking about utilizing or really designing the life cycle of an employee given those motivational factors in mind. And really, I'm a fan of the book by Dan Pink called Drive.
Oh, absolutely. Love that book.
Yeah, I like it very much. All of the ideas in the book aren't his alone. He actually aggregates a lot of work of other psychologists. But what he says, and I'm sure you know this too since you've read it, is basically that if you look at the different eras of humanity, like the agrarian era and the industrial era, that what motivated us then was the carrot and the stick, right? If you don't plow that field, your family's going to wither and die.
Right.
But he says the knowledge worker of today, what we're motivated by is something totally different. It's in its essence that we seek a sense of self-direction. And he goes on in more detail about a framework for self-direction based on 3 major tenets. And he says autonomy, mastery, purpose.
Absolutely.
And so every time I think about, or I'm asked to think about gamification, whether it's for customers, whether it's for employees, or really anybody, I always go back to that framework. It has really served me well. You know, when thinking about employees and what they care about, how is it that you can give them this sense of self-direction? How is it that you can either focus on autonomy or mastery or purpose when designing an experience? And it's interesting because this year is the very first year that I've been invited to present on serious games and gamification at HR summits. Mm-hmm. Before it's been training summits or gaming summits or CIO summits, but never HR. This is the first year that it's finally really taking hold, right? This essence of, gee,
I see exactly the same trend. I did 3 conferences. I was on panel, one I was speaking, the other we sponsored, and they were all HR learning. Mm-hmm. And those folks, very much so.
Yeah, it's finally taking off, which is really, really good. The problem that I see is that there's really a lot of bad stuff out there, bad examples of gamification. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is it's by organizations who make the assumption, the wrong assumption, that people are driven by badges, point systems, and leaderboards.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We just wrote a massive blog. It is like pure game mechanics is not going to happen.
Yeah, it's really weird. I find it bizarre. So when thinking again about employee engagement, I always go back to what gives them a sense of self-direction. And some things that we have done is we did this research project, maybe we started it off about 10 years ago with a company out in Palo Alto called Seriosity, mm-hmm. which basically studied guild leaders in World of Warcraft. And we studied the rotating leadership model, and we studied basically the way that characters within MMOs evolve over time and how their skill sets are transparent and just all kinds of tips and tricks.
Right.
And we've really taken that to heart when thinking about talent management. So all the way, starting at recruiting, how is it that you can use games in order to assess people, assess their leadership styles, assess their skill sets, all the way to using those data points to inform the creation of some kind of a visual representation of them, something that's unique, that grows and evolves over time, just like an avatar within an MMO. And then the basic premise is that as you complete milestones, as you complete projects, as you complete training and certification, you level up and it unlocks a new representation of your avatar. So what this means is, in essence, in 3 seconds, someone can look at an organization and say, okay, within this star performer team, notice how many red dragons are here, right? What is it about this red dragon archetype? What kinds of mentors did these people have? What are the milestones that they were able to unlock in order to get to this point in time? And there's just a lot of interesting things you could do. Again, focusing on self-direction, where people can choose different evolutionary paths for themselves based on what they know of their skill set and what opportunities are around them within the organization.
Absolutely, and I think, one of the, there were a couple of things even when we started, we were very cognizant of that, and this has nothing to do with PAKRA, it has to do with my personal views of the world. A lot of these psychometric assessments, which is about prescribed behaviors, right, or classifying behaviors in a certain way, I find them like, who made those people gods to make those behaviors be prescribed behaviors, as opposed to, we can use the games and the gamification framework, if you will, to collect data to see what people who are very successful, what behaviors do they show in this simulated environment, right? And that can itself project, and then we went about for the last 5 years collecting data to show that there is, I wouldn't say a causality, but a very strong correlation between behaviors they show on the game and what they do in reality.
You've heard the adage of you can tell so much about a person by playing a game with them. I mean, with my niece playing Monopoly, my gosh, I'd never want to go up against her in business. She's ruthless.
Right.
You can tell a lot. You can tell a lot about a person.
And also, meantime, they learn. So, it becomes both an assessment tool and a learning tool. For example, like the salespeople, if we come back to real world, one of the reason they cannot, there's a whole bell curve on sales performance is because most of the time it's not because they did not learn how to click a button on a CRM system. They did not learn because, or they did not convert the sale, if you will, because they couldn't overcome objections. So, what behaviors is basically
salespeople and games for salespeople. A whole show.
Exactly. So I see, us. I think one of the greatest asset probably you have sitting at IBM is that you do have the AI tools, correct, to look and mine those behaviors in these gaming situations to really bring forward a very transformative way of looking at how people work. Correct?
It's true. Yes.
That's amazing.
Them, watching their what kind of behaviors, but also we acquired the company Connexa,
right,
which really was one of the leaders in assessment testing, and they too see the benefits of using games for assessment versus bubble sheet, bubble charts, things like that.
Right. Absolutely, and so we have actually done exactly, we have the same. With slightly different words, but we have the same life cycle that we target of the employee. This brings me, to the next question I had, which is towards the end of the book, as you're talking about, the future of serious games and gamification in your book. you say, and I'm going to actually give this quote, transformation is not optional and it doesn't come easy to companies. And then you quote, agile. I mean, we usually call them also lean. Businesses achieve 10 to 15% higher margins and up to 5% faster revenue growth and 38% higher capital efficiency. And in order to do this, I guess how do you see serious games and gamification helping businesses transform, especially from an operating margin perspective?
I have a great chart which helps to demonstrate this, but I've got a chart that shows the taxonomy of serious games. And if you think about where the great majority of investments in serious games have been, they've been in skills training games, right?
Correct.
So how to fly an Apache helicopter, how to perform a surgery. The return on investment for skills training games that either augment or supplement costly face-to-face training is really good. I mean, in fact, the Kaufman Foundation said that when well executed, i.e. it has to be a well-designed game, right, it can improve the retention of knowledge by over 108%, which is good, really good. What we see, though, is that when you start integrating real data and real processes within these games, not the canned stuff, right, real data, then you can start to make games for strategic execution and tactical operations, which in essence means that the byproduct of your gameplay is that you're optimizing a process. And even the most minute increment in process improvement can lead to huge cost savings, absolutely huge cost savings for organizations. And there have been countless examples of this. Just looking at logistics alone, right? Moving troops out of Afghanistan or moving blankets and necessary disaster response relief to Haiti. What can you do in terms of cost improvements and efficiencies there, focusing on logistics? So there's just so much more that can and will be done in this space when you can start right to really improve the technologies and the abilities for what these games can do.
Absolutely. I mean, even on a smaller scale. I mean, if you think about, let's say you've deployed SAP, right? And one of the things that you're trying to do in a company is make sure that everybody adopts to SAP, right? Yeah. Instead of teaching them how to use the system, I personally think that games can help them to change those behaviors so that they don't, do workarounds. I mean, I think most people will do workarounds. You will, I will. I know for sure I will. The first time something doesn't work on a system, right? And to avoid that, you can actually create games where you can actually see that happening, right, in a smaller scale. I mean, that's a huge benefit. I mean, huge benefit to companies.
But also to vet it with people. And this, from a psychology perspective, this is really important because you need to get buy-in right within your organization and everybody else. You need to work with that. Yep, this is the process that we need to put in place when these events happen. And what better way than to actually play through it, right through the what-if scenarios in a highly visual, contextual way.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So that's the opportunity.
So you see, serious games going in that space in the next, 5 years.
It's happening now.
It is happening.
It's happening. It's happening. It's incredibly exciting to watch this space morph. And it's interesting now, the worlds of serious games and gamification starting to merge and blend.
Thankfully.
Yeah. It's just going to be interesting to see. Again, there's a lot of bad stuff out there. So I think, there needs to be a lot of thought leadership. Like, here's what this space can be. there's more to games than just this. There's all these other things, you know, which you can tap into. So I think there's just a tremendous opportunity.
Absolutely, and our ability to mine, you know, data, I think, in conjunction,
yes,
strengthens strengthens this enormously. I mean, and I do love in your book, you know, that you started by talking about motivational design, and you know, this is what Richard Thaler, you know, I did all of those, you know, strategic game theory. I used to be a professional graduate student for a very long time. A long time ago, but I used to be, and I was in you know, game theory, and then obviously in behavioral economics, and so this has always interested me. You know, the whole nudging thing. How do you design mechanism to change behaviors? You know, and so this is great. Well, congratulations on your book.
Thank you.
This is you know, this was a great discussion for our audience. And I love the way you positioned where we are all going. So this was a great chat. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you so much, Phaedra.